Procedure checklists allow a list of common procedures to be selected in a template. The list can be as long or as short as you choose. The only limitation is the number of cells in a checklist. A checklist can be up to 4 columns with up to 25 rows. Typically, the procedures will be the most common procedures your practice uses, or they will correspond with the procedures that are listed on your charge slip. Also, when configuring your procedure checklist, you want to be sure that the applicable CPT-4 codes are attached to the procedures within the checklist so that any applicable meaningful use objectives and measures are reported correctly. For more information on configuring the proper CPT-4 codes for procedures for meeting meaningful use objectives, see the ChartMaker Clinical Meaningful Use Handbook. The following sections will walk you through adding a procedure checklist to a template and then configuring the checklist for use. To add a procedure checklist to a template, you must first access the template list by clicking View and then Template List. Once the template list has been accessed, you need to select the applicable template you want to add the procedure checklist to. In the template editor, click Procedure List in the Functions list on the left. Once Procedure List is highlighted, make any spacing or other adjustments to the area where you want the procedure list to appear, and then position the cursor where you want the procedure checklist to appear in the template. After the cursor is blinking in the location you want the new procedure checklist to appear, click the corresponding button and the procedure checklist will appear in the template. To begin configuring the procedure checklist you have just added, right-click the No Heading bar of the checklist to access the Procedure Checklist Properties dialog. When the Procedure Checklist Properties dialog appears, you will see various fields and columns that allow you to configure what information will appear when procedures are selected and removed in a chart note. To begin, in the Heading field, enter the text you want to appear in the blue bar at the top of the procedure checklist. This will be the name of the checklist. If you want the heading to appear in the patient note, be sure that the corresponding box to the left is unchecked. If the box is checked, the heading will not appear in the patient's chart note. If after the heading you want a carriage return to place text on the very next line, then after the heading text, enter \R. Next, in the End of List field, enter any punctuation or text you want to appear at the end of the procedure checklist, if needed. Typically this would be a period and/or a \N for creating a space between the procedure checklist text and any other subsequent note text. You can then click into the Procedures Ordered field and enter the beginning statement or text that will appear before any procedures or tests added in the current note. If you want this heading to be on a separate line from the procedures or tests that are selected, insert a \R after this text. In the corresponding delimiter and conjunctions fields, you can enter the applicable delimiter and conjunctions for the Procedure Orders field. A delimiter is the punctuation or text that will appear between each selected item in the checklist for the designated field. The most common delimiter would typically be a comma. However, if you want each item to be its own sentence, then use a period in this field. Another option would be to use the \R functionality. A conjunction is the punctuation or text that will appear before the last selected item in the checklist for the designated field. Common conjunctions would be and or. If you want each item to be its own sentence, then use a period in this field. Another option would be to use the \R functionality. You can now enter the number of columns and rows for the procedure checklist. The maximum number of columns is 4, and the maximum number of rows is 25. When you have finished configuring the procedure checklist properties, click the OK button. To insert a procedure into the procedure checklist, simply right-click in the cell you want to insert a procedure into, and then click Insert Procedure. This opens the Procedure Search dialog. Here you can select the applicable search column and search type, and then begin typing the procedure you want to add in the description field. The system will return procedures that match that description for the search column and search type selected. Once the procedure is located, highlight that procedure and then click the OK button. You can then repeat this process until all applicable procedures are entered for your checklist. A label is a cell item that acts as a separator for a group of cells in a checklist. Labels cannot be clicked on to perform any functionality, but instead work as markers to group various procedures into categories. To add a label to the procedure checklist, right-click the cell you want to place a label in, and then click Insert Label. In the Label dialog, enter the label name you want to appear in the selected cell. When finished, click the OK button. Once the label is entered, you can then enter applicable procedures under that label. The Other button allows the user to add a procedure that is not currently in the procedure list. Once the Other button is clicked in the procedure list, the Procedures dialog will appear, allowing you to select a procedure from the complete procedure table. To add an Other button to the procedure checklist, right-click the cell you want to place an Other button label in, and then click Insert Other button. The Other button will then appear in the selected cell. The Sort function allows you to pick a specific cell in the procedure checklist and to sort the various checklist items to that particular point. Be aware when sorting items in the procedure checklist that any procedures, labels, and other buttons that are above the specified cell will be sorted. To sort the various checklist items, right-click the cell you want to sort to, and then click Sort Up to Here. The various items in the cells above the cell you are sorting from will then appear in alphabetical order. You have the ability to move various items within the procedure checklist to any empty cell, or, in a similar manner, you can swap the cell position with another checklist item. To move a particular cell item to an empty cell, simply left-click that item and drag it to the empty cell you want to move it to. Once the empty cell is highlighted, release the mouse button, and that item will move from the previous cell to the new cell. To swap positions with another cell item, simply left-click the item and then drag that item to the cell containing the item you want to swap positions with, and then release the mouse button. The items will then switch positions. To delete a procedure from a procedure checklist, right-click the procedure cell you want to delete, and then click Clear Item. This will remove the procedure from the list. The Smoking button allows you access to the Smoking Tobacco Use dialog in a chart note where you can configure any applicable smoking or tobacco use for the patient, as well as any cessation materials provided. When smoking and tobacco use is entered, it will appear in the specific chart note it was entered in. All of the smoking and tobacco use information entered in the patient chart notes will also be tracked and can be viewed via the History tab. To add a smoking button to a template, you must first access the template list by clicking View and then Template List. Once the template list has been accessed, you need to select the applicable template you want to add the smoking button to. In the template editor, click Smoking History in the Functions list on the left. Once smoking history is highlighted, make any spacing or other adjustments to the area where you want the smoking button to appear, and then position the cursor where you want the smoking button to appear in the template. After the cursor is blinking in the location you want the new smoking button to appear, click the corresponding button and the smoking button will then appear in the template. Next, you can click the smoking button to configure the smoking history heading. In the Smoking History Heading dialog, enter the heading for the smoking button you are adding and then click the OK button. The heading text will then appear to the left of the smoking button in the chart note. When finished, be sure to click the Save button if the autosave option is unchecked. The Surgical History button allows users to add free text notes up to 255 characters specifically for surgical history information. When a surgical history note is entered, the note will appear in the face sheet under Surgical History, as well as be tracked in the History tab. Remember, you can always manually add a surgical history button to a patient's chart instantly, even if it is not in the template. To add a surgical history button to a template, you must first access the template list by clicking View and then Template List. Once the template list has been accessed, you need to select the applicable template you want to add the surgical history button to. In the template editor, click Surgical History in the Tools list to the left. Once surgical history is highlighted, make any spacing or other adjustments to the area where you want the Surgical History button to appear, and then position the cursor where you want the Surgical History button to appear in the template. After the cursor is blinking in the location you want the New History button to appear, click the corresponding button, and the Surgical History button will then appear in the template. Next, you can click the Surgical History button to configure the button's heading. In the Miscellaneous Note Heading dialog, enter the heading for the Surgical History button you are adding, and then click the OK button. The heading text will appear to the left of the Surgical History button. This heading will precede any surgical history notes in the chart note. The Transition Referral Out button allows you access to the Transition of Care Referral Out information dialog in a chart note, where you can add free text notes regarding the transition of care or when a patient is being referred out. When a Transition Referral Out note is entered, you have the ability to display that note in the chart note as well as the patient's face sheet under the Miscellaneous Note list. These Transition of Care and/or Referral Out notes are also tracked in the History tab. To add a Transition Referral Out button to a template, you must first access the template list by clicking View and then Template List. Once the template list has been accessed, you need to select the applicable template you want to add the Transition Referral Out button to. In the template editor, click Transition Referral Out in the Functions list on the left. Once the Transition Referral Out is highlighted, make any spacing or other adjustments to the area where you want the Transition Referral Out button to appear, and then position the cursor where you want the Transition Referral button to appear in the template. After the cursor is blinking in the location you want the new Transition Referral Out button to appear, click the corresponding button, and the Transition Referral Out button will then appear in the template. Next, you can click the Transition Referral Out button to configure the Transition Referral Out heading. In the Miscellaneous Note Heading dialog, enter the heading for the Transition Referral Out button you are adding, and then click the OK button. The heading text will appear to the left of the Transition Referral Out button in the chart note. When finished, be sure to click the Save button if the Autosave option is unchecked. The Vitals button allows you access to the Vital Signs Entry dialog in a chart note, where you can enter and view vital sign information such as temperature, pulse, respiratory rate, blood pressure, height, weight, head circumference, oxygen saturation, and severity of pain for a patient. When vital sign information is entered, the configured information will appear in that chart note and will be tracked in the History tab. To add a Vitals button to a template, you must first access the template list by clicking View and then Template List. Once the template list has been accessed, you need to select the applicable template you want to add the Vitals button to. In the template editor, click Vital Signs in the Functions list on the left. Once Vital Signs is highlighted, make any spacing or other adjustments to the area where you want the Vitals button to appear, and then position the cursor where you want the Vitals button to appear in the template. After the cursor is blinking in the location you want the new Vitals button to appear, click the corresponding button and the Vitals button will then appear in the template. Next, you can click the Vitals button to configure the Vital Signs heading. In the Vital Signs Heading dialog, enter the heading for the Vitals button you are adding and then click the OK button. The heading text will then appear to the left of the Vitals button. Once the heading is configured, you can then edit the Vital Signs preferences by right-clicking the Vitals button and then clicking Edit Properties. This allows you access to the Vital Signs Preference dialog, where you can choose whether or not you want to show the particular vital sign in the Vital Signs Entry dialog, and then configure any default units or settings if applicable. To configure a vital sign preference, highlight the vital sign you want to configure on the left, and then the default settings will appear on the right. For example, if we highlight respiratory rate, the respiratory rate preferences will appear on the right. You can choose whether or not you want to include respiratory rate in the Vital Signs Entry dialog by checking the Show Vital Signs Entry. If this option is not checked, the vital sign will not appear in the Vital Signs Entry dialog. You'll then notice that there are no default units to configure for the respiratory rate, and the settings section allows you to configure how to display the vital sign, the absolute maximum rate, a high warning rate along with the applicable warning verbiage, a default value if needed, a low warning rate along with the applicable warning verbiage, an absolute minimum rate, and any E&M guideline that this particular vital sign meets. Once the settings are configured as needed, you can then repeat this process for each of the other vital signs. When finished, click the OK button. When finished configuring the Vitals button, heading, and properties, be sure to click the Save button if the autosave option is unchecked. This concludes this section of the ChartMaker Clinical Template Editing training video. To replay this video, click the Replay button. If you'd like to replay a particular section of the video, you can click the appropriate entry in the table of contents to the left. To continue with the next part of the template editing training video, or to view a previous part, click the applicable link on our website.